Hi and welcome to another story, and today we have part 2 of The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy, continuing from chapter 4. It was the morning of the potion test and the girls were filing into the potion lab, each hoping she had learned the right spell except for Ethel, who knew everything and never worried about such matters. "Come along girls, 2 to a cauldron," barked Miss Hardbroom. "Today we shall make a laughter potion. No textbooks to be used. Put that book away that instant, Mildred. Work quietly, and when you've finished you may take a small sip of the mixture to make sure it is correctly made. You may begin." Maud and Mildred were sharing a cauldron, of course, but unfortunately neither of them had learned that particular spell. "I think I can remember it vaguely," whispered Maud. "Bits of it, anyway." She began to sort through the ingredients, which had been laid out in each workbench. When everything was stirred together in the cauldron, the bubbling liquid was bright pink. Mildred stared at it doubtfully. "I'm sure it should be green," she said. "In fact, I'm sure we should have put in a handful of pondweed gathered at midnight." "Are you sure?" asked Maud. "Yes," replied Mildred, not very definitely. "Absolutely sure?" Maud asked again. "You know what happened last time." "I'm quite sure," insisted Mildred. "Anyway, there's a handful of pondweed laid out on each bench. I'm positive we're supposed to put it in." "Oh, all right," said Maud. "Go on then. It can't do any harm." Mildred grabbed her pondweed and dropped it into the mixture. They took turns at stirring it for a few minutes until it began to turn dark green. "What a horrid colour," said Maud. "Are you ready, girls?" asked Miss Hardbroom, rapping on her desk. "You should have been ready minutes ago. A laughter potion should be made quickly for use in an emergency." Ethel was still working on the bench in front of Mildred, who stood on tiptoe to sneak a look at the colour of Ethel's potion. To her horror, it was bright pink. "Oh no," Mildred thought with a sinking feeling. "I wonder what potion we've made." Miss Hardbroom banged on the desk again. "We shall now test the potion," she commanded. "Not too much, please. We don't want anyone hysterical." Each pupil took a test tube full of liquid and drank a little. At once shrieks of laughter rang through the room, especially from Ethel's bench, where they'd made the best potion of all and were laughing so much that tears rolled down their cheeks. The only 2 girls who weren't laughing were Mildred and Maud. "Oh dear," said Maud. "I feel most peculiar. Why aren't we laughing, Mill?" "I hate to tell you," confessed Mildred. "I think—" But before she had time to say any more, the 2 girls had disappeared. "Cauldron number 2, snapped Miss Hardbroom. "You seem to have made the wrong spell." "It was my fault," said Mildred's voice from behind the cauldron. "That I do not doubt," Miss Hardbroom said sourly. "You had both better sit down until you reappear, and then, Mildred, perhaps a trip to Miss Cackle's office would do you some good. You can explain why I sent you." Everyone had left the room by the time the 2 young witches finally began to reappear. This was a very slow process, with first the head and then the rest of the body becoming gradually visible. "I'm sorry," said Mildred's head and shoulders. "That's all right," said Maud's head. "I just wish you'd think a bit more. We had the right potion to start with." "Sorry," mumbled Mildred again. Then she began to laugh. "Hey, Maud, you do look funny with just your head showing." At once they both began to laugh, and soon they were best friends again. "I suppose I'd better go and see old Cackle now," said Mildred, when she'd completely reappeared. "I'll come with you to the door," offered Maud. Miss Cackle was small and very fat, with short grey hair and green horn-rimmed glasses, which she usually wore pushed up onto the top of her head. She was the exact opposite of Miss Hardbroom, being absent-minded in appearance and rather gentle by nature. The girls were not in the least bit afraid of her, whereas Miss Hardbroom could reduce any of them to a miserable heap with just one word. Miss Cackle used a different technique. By always being friendly and pleased to see her people in her office, she made them feel embarrassed if they had something unpleasant to tell her, as Mildred nearly always had. Mildred knocked at Miss Cackle's door, hoping she would be out. She wasn't. "Come in," called the familiar voice from inside. Mildred opened the door and went in. Miss Cackle, glasses on her nose for once, was busily writing in her huge register. She looked up and peered over her spectacles. "Ah, Mildred," she said pleasantly. "Come and sit down while I finish filling in this register." Mildred closed the door and sat by Miss Cackle's desk. "I wish she wasn't so pleased to see me," she thought. Miss Cackle slammed the register shut and pushed her glasses onto the top of her head. "Now, Mildred, what can I do for you?" Mildred twisted her fingers together. "Well, actually, Miss Cackle," she began slowly, "Miss Hardbroom sent me to see you because I made the wrong potion again." The smile faded from the headmistress's face, and she sighed, as if with deep disappointment. Mildred felt about an inch high. "Really, Mildred," Miss Cackle said in a tired voice, "I've run out of things to say to you. Week after week you come here, sent by every member of staff in the school, and my words just seem to go straight in one ear and out the other. You will never get the witch's higher certificate if this appalling conduct continues. You must be the worst witch in the entire school. Whenever there's any trouble, you are nearly always to be found at the bottom of it, and it's just not good enough, my dear. Now, what have you to say for yourself this time?" "I don't really know, Miss Cackle," Mildred said humbly. "Everything I do just seems to go wrong, that's all. I don't mean to do it. Well, that's no excuse, is it? Said Miss Cackle. Everyone else manages to live without causing an uproar wherever they go. You must pull yourself together, Mildred. I don't want to hear any more bad reports about you. Do you understand? Yes, Miss Cackle, said Mildred, in as sorry voice as she could manage. Run along, then, said the headmistress, and remember what I have said to you. Maud was waiting in the corridor, eager to know what had been said, when her friend came out of the office. She's nice, really, Mildred said. Just told me all the usual things. She hates telling people off. I'll have to try to be better from now on. Come on, let's go and give the kittens another broomstick lesson. Chapter 5. The following morning, Miss Hardbroom strode into the classroom looking thoughtful. She was wearing a new grey and black striped dress with a brooch at the shoulder. Good morning, girls, she greeted them, not as sharply as usual. Good morning, Miss Hardbroom, chorused the girls. Their form mistress arranged the books on her desk and surveyed the class. I have something to tell you, girls, she began, that gives me great pleasure on one hand, yet causes me some worry on the other. Here she shot a glance at Mildred. As you know, the Halloween celebrations take place in 2 weeks' time, and it is customary for a display to be presented by this school. This year our class has been chosen to present the display. There were gasps of delight from the girls. Of course, Miss Hardbroom went on, it is a great honour, but also a responsibility, as Miss Cackle's Academy has a very high reputation, which we don't want to spoil, do we? Last year, Form 3 produced a play, which was highly praised, and I thought that this year we might present a broomstick formation team. You will need a lot of practice, as some of you are not too steady on your broomsticks yet, but I'm quite certain that we could give an interesting and successful performance. Is there anyone who would prefer something different? She looked around piercingly at the girls, who all shrank into their seats, and would not have dared to disagree, even if they had wanted to. Good, said Miss Hardbroom. Then it is settled. We shall present a broomstick formation team. Let us go down to the yard and begin to practice at once. Fetch your broomsticks and be outside in 2 minutes. With which words she vanished. The girls excitedly clattered from the room and rushed along the corridors to fetch their broomsticks, which were kept in their own rooms. The spiral staircase rang with the sound of hobnail boots as the girls rushed down to the yard, where they found Miss Hardbroom waiting for them. First of all, you'd better take a practice flight, she said. Form an orderly crocodile and go around the school and back. Off they all flew in an orderly but rather wobbly procession around the school. Quite good, girls, said Miss Hardbroom as they lined up in front of her. You were swaying about rather badly, Mildred, but apart from that you all did quite well. Now, I have made out a list of the things you will be doing. First, a single line, with each pupil sinking and rising alternately. This should be comparatively easy. Secondly, flying V, similar to wild geese in flight. Then nose-diving the yard and swooping up just before you reach the ground. That will be the most difficult part of all. Mildred and Maud exchanged horrified glances. And finally you will form a circle in the air, each broomstick touching the next. Any questions? No? Very well then, we shall begin the first item immediately. What was the first item, Mildred? Nose-diving the yard, Miss Hardbroom? Wrong. Ethel, do you remember? We're to form a line, each pupil sinking and rising alternately, replied Ethel. Word perfect, as always. Correct, said Miss Hardbroom with a frosty glare at Mildred. We shall practice all this morning, and every morning until the celebrations, and perhaps this afternoon, if I can persuade Miss Bat to allow you to miss your chanting lesson. They worked very hard for the next 2 weeks. Every spare minute was spent practising, and by the time Halloween arrived, the display was quite a joy to watch. Maud's hat was squashed like a concertina from the time when she had not pulled up from a nosedive during practice, but apart from that there had been hardly any trouble at all, even from Mildred, who was making a special effort to be good and thoughtful. The day before Halloween, Miss Hardbroom lined up her class in the yard to give them a final few words of advice. I am very pleased with you girls, she said almost pleasantly. Now you will be wearing your best robes tomorrow, so I hope you will be clean and pressed. As she said this, she caught sight of Mildred's broomstick. Mildred, why is there a bundle of sticky tape in the middle of your broomstick? I'm afraid I broke it in half during the first week of term, admitted Mildred. Ethel giggled. I see, said Miss Hardbroom. Well, you certainly can't use that one in the display. Ethel, I seem to remember you had a spare one. Perhaps you could lend it to Mildred. Oh, Miss Hardbroom, cried Ethel. It was given to me as a birthday present. I shouldn't want anything to happen to it. Miss Hardbroom fixed Ethel with one of her nastiest looks. If that is how you feel, Ethel, she said, in icy tones, then... Oh, I didn't mean I won't lend it, Miss Hardbroom, Ethel said meekly. I'll go and fetch it now. And she ran into the school. Ethel had never forgotten the time Mildred had turned her into a pig, and as she made her way up the spiral staircase, she suddenly thought of a marvellous way of taking her revenge. Ethel really wasn't a nice person at all. "I'll fix you, Mildred Hubble," she cackled to herself as she took the broomstick out of her cupboard. "Now listen to me, Broom. This is very important." The class had dismissed when Ethel returned carrying the broomstick. Mildred was practising nose-diving the yard. "Here's the broom, Mildred," called Ethel. "I'll leave it propped up against the wall." "Thanks very much," replied Mildred, delighted that Ethel was being so nice, for the two hadn't spoken since the pig episode. "It's very kind of you." "Not at all," said Ethel, smiling wickedly to herself as she went back into the school. And that is where we will leave part 2 of The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. I'll be back soon with the next part of this fantastic story and lots more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, that's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.